I want you to imagine a highly relatable scenario for a second.
Uh-huh.
You send a text message to a friend.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Right. It's like a pretty standard text, maybe asking a quick question about an assignment or, just sharing a joke. And you hit send. 5 minutes go by.
No response.
Exactly. No response. Okay, they're busy, right?
Yeah.
20 minutes go by. Still nothing. An hour passes, and suddenly your brain is just absolutely convinced that they hate you.
Yep.
Like, you are actively replaying every interaction you've ever had with this person, isolating every single time you might have been, I don't know, slightly awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And you just conclude that you are fundamentally annoying and you're destined to be alone forever.
It is honestly incredible how quickly the mind can just sprint from a silent phone screen to, like, total social isolation.
And so fast.
It really is. It's a leap of logic that makes absolutely no sense when you say it out loud. Yet in the heat of that exact moment,
Yes.
it feels like an undeniable, objective fact, you know?
Yeah. And when your brain makes that wild leap, you are experiencing what clinical psychologists call a cognitive distortion. So today we are taking a deep dive into a stack of cognitive behavioral therapy workbooks, mindfulness research, and clinical psychology papers to figure out how to debug this mental software.
It's such an important topic.
It really is, and we're looking at this specifically through the high-pressure lens of student life, where these distortions just love to hide out. Our mission today is to help you recognize these sneaky, inaccurate mental filters and give you the actual tools to reframe them. So let's look under the hood first. Why does the brain go out of its way to manufacture all this misery?
Well, the irony here is that your brain isn't actually trying to torture you. I mean, it's trying to protect you.
By convincing me my friends hate me.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
You have to remember that the human brain is a really ancient piece of hardware. It evolved to keep us alive in a world full of physical predators, so it acts as this relentless prediction machine, constantly scanning the horizon for threats.
Right.
But when you are under chronic stress, sleep-deprived, and just totally overwhelmed, which, let's be honest, is pretty much the job description of a student, that threat detection system loses its calibration.
Ah, I see.
It starts treating a delayed text message or like a really tough essay prompt with the exact same biological alarm system it would use for a saber-toothed tiger.
It sounds like we are walking around with a faulty smoke detector. Like
Right.
It goes off whether the whole house is burning down or you just, burned a piece of toast.
Exactly.
Because the sensor has just become so hypervigilant, it can no longer tell the difference between a real emergency and a minor inconvenience.
That is the perfect analogy for it. And actually, back in the 1960s, psychiatrist Aaron Beck, who's sort of the pioneer of cognitive behavioral therapy, he categorized the specific ways that smoke detector malfunction.
Okay, what did he call them?
He called these glitches ANTs, automatic negative thoughts.
Like the bug.
Just like the bug. And the crucial mechanism here is that word automatic. Like, these thoughts bypass your critical thinking entirely. They happen so fast that you don't even register the logic. You just get flooded with the terrible emotion that follows, and you accept the thought as reality.
Wow. Okay, so if we're going to fix the smoke detector, we kind of need to know what triggers it in the first place.
Yeah.
Let's look at how these ANTs actually operate in daily life.
So let's do it.
So, have you ever been sitting in a study group and you start explaining an idea and someone across the table just glances down at their phone?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Instantly, your brain decides, oh, they think I'm stupid. I'm boring them. Everyone in this room is secretly judging me.
And notice what the brain is doing right there. It encounters ambiguity like, a person looking at a phone could mean literally anything. Maybe they're checking the time or, waiting for an urgent email.
Right, could be totally harmless.
Exactly. But the anxious brain hates ambiguity. It feels really unsafe. So it fills in the blank with a worst-case assumption to sort of artificially create certainty. Psychologists call this specific distortion mind reading.
Mind reading, that makes sense.
Yeah, you are projecting your own insecurities onto someone else and assuming you know their internal thoughts without a shred of actual evidence.
So mind reading creates this false social threat. But what happens when the brain applies that same flawed logic to our future?
It gets even messier.
I bet. Let's say you get a single bad grade on a pop quiz. It's a minor quiz worth maybe like 5% of your total grade. But within seconds, your brain visualizes this cascading domino effect.
Oh, the spiral.
The spiral. You assume you'll fail the class, which means you'll lose your scholarship, which means your career is ruined, and you'll end up destitute.
Right. And that mechanism is known as catastrophizing. Again, it's the brain trying to prepare you for the absolute worst case scenario so you aren't caught off guard. But the physiological cost of that is just Immense.
Puzzle.
Well, when you visualize that chain reaction, your amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, it can't differentiate between an imagined future and a present reality.
Wait, really? It literally can't tell the difference.
It can't. So it dumps cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream as if the catastrophe is happening right now, completely exhausting your nervous system over a 5% quiz.
That exhaustion makes perfect sense, especially when you pair it with the next really common trap, which is getting, say, a B+ on a paper, but reacting to it as if you just scored a 0.
Yes.
Like you tell yourself, if I don't get a perfect A, I am a total failure.
Yeah.
Why does the brain strip away all the nuance and force us into these extreme binaries?
That is called black and white thinking or polarized thinking. The brain defaults to it because nuance requires a lot of cognitive energy.
That makes sense.
Gray areas are complex, they're messy, but binary categories like good or bad, success or failure, genius or idiot, those are simple. Under high stress, your brain tries to conserve energy by forcing complex situations into this simplistic binary code.
It's like a shortcut.
Exactly, a shortcut. But the problem is that it drives a really toxic perfectionism, leaving absolutely no room for the reality of just being human.
It also kind of acts like a bouncer at a club, selectively deciding what information is even allowed in.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Think about a scenario where you actually ace a job interview for a great internship. The panel tells you your portfolio is fantastic.
Okay, good so far.
Right. But on the way out the door, you stumble over one slightly awkward sentence when you're saying goodbye.
Uh-oh.
You will spend the entire commute home obsessing over that one sentence, completely ignoring all the praise and deciding they were just taking pity on you when they complimented your portfolio.
That is a fascinating combination of two distortions, actually, mental filtering and discounting the positive.
Okay, break those down.
You are basically experiencing an active confirmation bias. If, deep down, you feel incompetent, your brain will reject any incoming data that proves you are competent, while obsessively hoarding this tiny piece of awkward data that validates your insecurity.
But wait, if the alarm system is this loud and the confirmation bias is this strong, it kind of begs the question, how do you, as a student, know when a worry crosses the line from a normal, healthy concern into one of these full-blown distortions?
That's a really good question.
Because if you have a massive midterm coming up, you should be a little worried. That's what keeps you studying.
Right, exactly. The distinction really comes down to momentum and reality testing. A normal, proportional worry motivates you to act. You worry about the midterm, so you open the textbook and study. The worry resolves.
Okay.
But a cognitive distortion paralyzes you. It crosses the danger line when you engage in what clinical psychology calls emotional reasoning.
Emotional reasoning. So elevating a feeling to the status of a fact.
Precisely. Emotional reasoning is the dangerous, frankly illogical assumption that your feelings are an objective reflection of reality. It's the belief that if you feel like a failure, you must factually be a failure. Yeah, or if you feel overwhelmed by a project, the project must be factually impossible. It bypasses the prefrontal cortex, your logic center, entirely. The emotion itself becomes the only evidence you need.
Okay, so if the smoke alarm is blaring, and we've tricked ourselves into believing the fire is real just because the noise is loud, how do we actually turn the alarm off? We need to build a mental toolkit to debug this software.
We do. And the foundational tool in cognitive behavioral therapy for this exact problem is a really straightforward 3-step process. Catch it, check it, change it.
Check it, change it.
Right. The first step, catch it, is just building the awareness to recognize that your smoke detector is going off. But the second step, check it, is where we actually intervene. We do this through something called Socratic questioning.
Okay, let's test that out.
Yeah.
Say you're a student and you're just dreading an upcoming class presentation. Your automatic negative thought is, I'm going to stumble over my words, look like a fool, and everyone in the room is going to laugh at me.
A very common one.
How do we Socratic question that prediction?
You essentially have to put your own brain on the witness stand, but you have to act as the defense attorney, not just the prosecutor.
Oh, like that.
So first, you check the facts. What is the empirical, courtroom admissible evidence supporting this 100% failure rate? Have you given a presentation before?
Probably.
Right. And did the entire room actually point and laugh at you? Probably not. Then you ask, what evidence contradicts this thought? Have you prepared your notes? Do you know the topic fairly well?
So you're forcing the brain to separate the feeling of anxiety from the prediction of the future.
Yeah.
You're nervous, which is a totally normal biological response to public speaking, But the distortion has twisted that nervousness into a guaranteed prophecy of public humiliation.
Exactly. And the most powerful Socratic question you can ask yourself in that moment is to take the third-party perspective.
Hmm.
Just ask yourself, what would I say to a friend who was in this exact situation?
Oh man, we are so incredibly vicious to
We
ourselves.
really are.
If a friend came to you terrified about a presentation, you would never say, yeah, you're definitely going to bomb, everyone will laugh, you're a complete loser. You'd say, you've got this, you know the material, just take a deep breath. Why is there such a massive gap between our self-talk and our friend talk?
It's basically because we lack psychological distance with our own internal monologue. When you talk to a friend, your amygdala isn't the one running the show. Your prefrontal cortex is engaged, which allows you to be objective and compassionate.
Oh, that makes sense.
The Socratic method physically forces you to step outside yourself to access that same neurological distance. And there is another brilliant tool for creating this distance, specifically designed for the distortion of personalization.
Personalization. That's when you blame yourself entirely for things outside your control, right? Like when a group project fails and you instantly think, this is entirely my fault, I ruined it for everyone.
Yes, exactly that. The tool to dismantle that is called the responsibility pie. Instead of carrying 100% of the guilt, you draw a literal pie chart and force yourself to assign slices to all the other contributing factors.
So you start analyzing the mechanics of the failure. Maybe one group member never showed up to the meetings. That's like a 20% slice.
Right.
Maybe the professor's rubric was incredibly vague. That's a 30% slice. Maybe the library database crashed the night before it was due. By the time you assign all these external factors, your personal slice of the blame is visually much, much smaller than your initial guilt told you it was.
And what's really fascinating about the responsibility pie is why we need it in the first place. Like, why do we default to taking all the blame?
Yep. Why do we do that?
It stems from cognitive egocentrism and the illusion of control. If the failure is 100% your fault, it means you implicitly had 100% of the control over the situation. If you admit that the failure was caused by a dozen external factors, you have to accept that the world is chaotic and unpredictable. We unconsciously prefer the heavy burden of guilt over the terrifying feeling of powerlessness.
That is wild. We'd rather be entirely at fault than admit we're just along for the ride.
Yep.
But let me challenge this for a second. What if you do the Socratic questioning, you draw the pie chart, and the evidence does point to you messing up?
Okay, fair point.
What if you genuinely skipped the reading or you really did drop the ball on your section of the project? Isn't all this reframing just a way to, trick yourself into avoiding accountability?
That is a highly common misconception about this process, actually. The goal of cognitive behavioral therapy is not toxic positivity. It's not about coddling yourself or constructing some delusion where you are flawless.
Right.
The goal is psychological flexibility. It is about learning to respond to a genuine failure with proportional, balanced logic rather than global self-condemnation.
Okay, I see the distinction. It's a difference between saying, I failed the midterm because I'm inherently stupid and worthless, versus saying, I failed the midterm because I played video games until 3 a.m. instead of studying.
Exactly. Look at the difference in the momentum of those two thoughts. The first thought, I am inherently stupid, is a distortion based on labeling. It generates shame.
And shame paralyzes you.
It's a paralyzing emotion.
Yeah.
It makes you want to hide, drop the class, and just give up. But the second thought, I played video games instead of studying, is a painful objective truth. It generates healthy guilt.
Healthy guilt.
Healthy guilt is an action-oriented emotion. If you didn't study, you can change that behavior next time. You cannot fix being inherently worthless.
So the change it step is really about finding the accurate, actionable narrative. Understanding that logic is half the battle, but the other half is actively changing the vocabulary we use inside our own heads.
The vocabulary is key.
Psychoanalyst Karen Horney actually coined a concept that perfectly captures how language traps us. She called it the tyranny of the shoulds.
The tyranny of the shoulds. It refers to the rigid, absolute rules and unrealistic expectations we just impose on ourselves.
Like what?
Like, I should never make a mistake. I must always be the smartest person in the room. I should have known better. When you dictate your life with shoulds and musts, you are basically building a trap.
Because no one is perfect.
Exactly. The moment you inevitably fall short of superhuman perfection, the linguistic trap snaps shut, resulting in immense frustration and self-loathing.
Absolute language is incredibly dangerous. Words like always, never, and every paint your entire existence with the brush of a single mistake.
I do.
So the key to escaping the tyranny of the shoulds is reframing identity labels into behavioral descriptions. Instead of saying, I lost my ID card again and I'm such an idiot, you separate your core identity from the passing event.
Right.
You say, I misplaced my ID today, but I usually keep track of things. You are an idiot. You are a highly capable person who just had an absent-minded moment.
And, it might sound like a mere semantic trick, just playing with words, but neurobiologically, it is profound. You are teaching your brain to contextualize threats.
There is also a powerful technique for when you are trying to change the thought, but positive thinking just feels too fake.
Yes.
Say you are absolutely terrified of going to a networking event.
Yeah.
If you try to force the affirmation, I am going to be the life of the party, everyone will love me, and I will get 5 job offers, your brain knows you are lying to it.
Oh, absolutely.
It will reject the thought,
Yeah.
and your anxiety might actually spike. So instead, you need to shift to neutral.
Shifting to neutral is an incredibly effective de-escalation tactic. You intentionally lower the stakes by visualizing a scenario that is neither a catastrophic failure nor a triumphant cinematic success.
You're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, you just picture yourself going to the event, making a bit of awkward small talk, grabbing a free coffee, and leaving safely. It completely removes the performance pressure.
It's exactly like driving a manual transmission car. If your car is rolling backwards in reverse, which is, your catastrophic anxiety, you cannot slam the gear stick directly into 5th gear drive, which is toxic positivity.
You'll destroy the transmission.
You will destroy it. You have to pass through neutral first to safely change momentum. But again, to play devil's advocate here, when I distance myself, when I shift to neutral, am I actually fixing the problem, or am I just running a temporary con on my own nervous system?
You aren't conning your nervous system, you are manually overriding it. When a cognitive distortion triggers you, your amygdala hijacks the brain's resources, physically pulling blood flow away from your prefrontal cortex.
Great.
So when you intentionally use neutral language, you are physically lowering the emotional temperature, you are buying your prefrontal cortex the critical seconds it needs to boot back up, come back online, and just shut off the amygdala's false alarm.
But to keep that prefrontal cortex strong, you can't just do a worksheet once and expect to be cured. Cognitive distortions thrive on autopilot. If you want to rewire those neural pathways, you have to build a daily routine for psychological flexibility. You have to actively practice stepping out of autopilot.
And the ultimate defense against autopilot is grounding yourself in the present moment. One of the most highly recommended ways to snap out of a rumination spiral is the 5-4-3-2-1 sensory grounding method.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, you identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you hear, 2 you smell, and 1 you taste.
And there's a brilliant addition to this for when you are really in the grip of an emotional hijack. You pair that sensory awareness with spoken affirmations. You state your name, your physical location, and the current date out loud. Why is it so important to actually speak the words?
Because vocalizing forces the brain to shift gears. When you speak out loud, you require Broca's area and Wernicke's area, which are the language processing centers of your brain, to activate.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, processing syntax requires complex cognition, which actively pulls metabolic energy away from the emotional centers that are panicking about the past or the future. You are neurologically anchoring yourself in the undeniable, frankly boring reality of right now.
Another incredibly accessible way to step off autopilot is through mindful chores. We all have mundane tasks we have to do every day.
We do.
Take doing the laundry. Usually we do it while listening to a lecture or stressing about a deadline. Our mind's just a million miles away. But if you execute it mindfully, you pay hyper attention to the physical reality of the task.
Right, being fully present.
Exactly. You notice the heat of the clothes straight out of the dryer. You feel the stiffness of a denim jacket versus the softness of a cotton shirt. You focus completely on the geometry of folding. It turns a chore into a mini meditation.
It provides your brain with a resting state that isn't focused on threat detection. And to build on that daily routine, you should implement what clinical practitioners call the N versus D audit, the nurturing versus draining audit.
This concept of an energy economy is fascinating to me. Break down how this audit works.
Basically, you write down all your daily activities and brutally categorize them. Is this activity N nourishing and nurturing to my mental state? Or is it De-draining and depleting.
Okay.
You map out your day to bring conscious awareness to exactly where your cognitive energy is going. The goal is to make intentional, strategic choices to increase the N activities to offset the D activities.
It's literally like auditing a bank account. You are looking at the ledger to see where you are bleeding mental currency.
Exactly.
And physical activity is a massive end deposit. The materials we reviewed referenced a 2022 study where participants engaged in an 8-week Pilates routine.
Yes, that was a great study.
The physical movement successfully disrupted their rumination cycles, significantly eliminating cognitive distortions and building measurable psychological endurance. But here's the reality check for a busy university student.
Okay, lay it on me.
If I audit my schedule, my draining activities are mandatory. I have 3-hour lectures, organic chemistry labs, a part-time job, and a commute. I can't just drop them to go do Pilates. How do you balance a ledger when the D list is entirely non-negotiable?
That is the reality for the vast majority of people, and it's a really crucial point. You often cannot eliminate the draining activities, but you still maintain control over the balance.
Okay, how?
If you look at your ledger and see you have a heavily draining day ahead, say 2 major exams and a long shift at work, you must aggressively schedule a nurturing activity to compensate.
Aggressively schedule.
Yes, you don't just hope you'll have time to relax at the end of the day. You schedule a walk, a phone call with a friend, or 20 minutes of reading for pleasure with the exact same unmovable priority as your exam.
Wow.
You have to treat self-care as a vital clinical intervention, not a luxury reserved for when everything else is finished. Because as a student, the work is never truly finished.
Treating self-care as a clinical intervention. That completely shifts the paradigm. It's not a reward, it's maintenance for the machine.
Precisely.
So let's look at the big picture of what we've unpacked today in this deep dive. We've learned that cognitive distortions, those automatic thoughts that catastrophize our grades or convince us our friends hate us, are just malfunctions in an ancient threat detection system.
Right.
But by catching the alarm, checking the empirical evidence by putting our own brains on the witness stand, and shifting our absolute language into neutral, we can manually override the panic. And by grounding ourselves in daily sensory routines and rigorously auditing our mental energy, we build the psychological flexibility to keep the system running smoothly.
It is a continuous, daily process of reality testing, but it is one that offers profound, tangible relief from the exhaustion of constantly battling your own mind. I really want to leave the listener with a thought from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is a pioneer in mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Let's hear it.
He noted, "If you are breathing, there is more right with you than wrong with you."
If you are breathing, there is more right with you than wrong with you. I want you to carry that thought as you navigate your week. What would happen to your baseline stress levels if you started treating your own mind with the exact same curiosity, patience, and benefit of the doubt that you freely offer to your closest friends?
It's a great question.
What if you gave yourself permission to just be human? So the next time you send a text message and an hour goes by with no reply before you assume you are entirely unlovable, take a breath, check the evidence, and remind yourself that they're probably just in the shower.